The Outsiders Podcast 13. Wow, 13. The podcast for the end of Western civilization. Take that how you wish. Anyway, for the last 12 days in a row, every time I have been during the day, first of all, I created an entire list of things to talk about. When I first began this idea, I said, okay, I want to do at least 20 of these, see how it feels. And every single day, something has come up. Oh, I want to talk about that. And so I've just ran with that, following my energy and my excitement every time as far as what topic to talk about. But this list that I made originally, I haven't even looked at it yet. So I opened it up today and said, okay, maybe I'm actually going to start working through my list here, because I've been through I've been through 13 so far, and I've covered maybe half of the topics that I thought I would cover in the first 20. I love the quote by Stefan Molyneux, who I don't know what he's doing now, but he said at one point, and I really liked what he said. He said, if you say slavery is wrong, then the answer of the typical 1850s South person would be, well, who's going to pick the cotton if we don't have slavery, right? And his answer was, it doesn't matter who picks the cotton because slavery is wrong. Slavery is immoral. Well, I'm convinced that our current economic system is just as immoral as slavery is or ever was. This thing should be good eventually. And when you mention any way that you say, well, you know, the U.S. government bombs and kills children all over the world and destabilizes nation states and supports slavery in building iPhones and causes untold devastation. Go learn about that island in Hawaii that was a bomb target area and its entire history if you really want to mourn something lost. And then the answer that they always bring you is, well, what about roads? As if this magical creature, this amazingly miraculous power that creates roads somehow at a cost that may be 3 to 10 times what they actually would cost in any sort of free environment, as if human beings could never do this thing. If they didn't have that all-powerful deity of, well, no one knows how to make roads but the government, and no one would be, you know, he says, yes, so without the government, we'd have my house and we'd have a store, and we'd all just sit there staring at each other, not knowing what to do, right? And this is, so I don't want to go into the roads thing, because you can Google anarchy and roads and find all sorts of answers to that question and every other question. But remember, we're talking from a moral viewpoint here. We're not talking about, here's the prime solution for every single issue in the universe. We're saying, you know what, this is immoral. It's immoral to force people to do things. It's immoral to harm others who haven't harmed anyone else. And it's a formula both for not happy living, as well as multiplying the evils and destructions in society. So we don't want to do that. But that said, let's look at what people think about solving problems like justice. How are we going to do justice without the state? How are we going to fight wars without armies? How are we going to punish crime? And that first question is twisted, because the question is, how do we punish crime? Well, do you think punishment solves problems? When you've made a mistake and you've been punished, did you feel like, wow, that feels really good. That helped me see what I've been doing wrong, and I'm going to do things different now. When someone else, an authority figure, comes and says, well, now you're going to get spanked or beaten or hit or shot or fined or caged or whatever, was that a motivator for your improved behavior? Or did you find that other ways were better? And sure, there's consequences, and that's why I want to talk a little bit about natural justice today. I'm not an expert on natural justice, or restorative justice is a fantastic term if you want to start Googling and looking at restorative justice and how justice works in communities that do not have violence behind them. It's fascinating. I remember watching a documentary that was cool. It's called Life in the Mesa. And these people created an anarchist society quite accidentally. These weren't your utopian visionaries who went and bought 100 acres and built a carefully designed suburb and lived there, or even like Ganas, who bought a bunch of houses and lived there. No, life on the, what did I say? Plateau? Mesa. Life on the Mesa. That's what it was called. So no, the Mesa is this place very far from the middle of nowhere, either in New Mexico. I think it's in New Mexico or Arizona, but New Mexico, let's say. And there's about 100 people living there, many of whom are mentally ill, many of whom served in the military, former Vietnam vets, just this total cross-section of society. And the interesting thing about where they live and how they choose to live, number one, they're completely off the status quo. They just left everything, right? And they're in the middle of nowhere. And so there is no justice system. There are no police out there. Again, smaller community, 100 people-ish. And some of them on welfare to finance things. And one guy, as it turns out, dealing pot to keep things going out there. And then he got later raided. That's, anyway, spoiler alert, sorry. But so these people are living out on the Mesa, and they have a problem. Someone steals from someone else. And they have these so-called rowdy kids that are something out of Lord of the Rings. And then they have this mother with a few children, and somehow they decide, well, everything belongs to everybody. Therefore, we're going to go in this mother with 3 children's camper and just take her food. Well, as soon as that happened, the entire community said, whoa, this cannot be allowed. Even when we are here with no rules and no external government and whatever, we can't allow that. And so, and also a bunch of people are armed on this Mesa. So there are a bunch of guns there, but as far as I could tell, no gun violence, right? So anyway, they call these young people together and they say, well, what did you do? And what was your thinking? And they just start talking to them. Hey, we can't have a place where everyone just takes whatever they want from whoever they want. That's not going to work here. And do you understand that she's a mother and she has children, and you took this food that she had earmarked for her children, and now how is she supposed to take care of her children? And they had this long conversation about what's going on, right? And that was the first step. The first step was, let's figure out what happened, who was harmed, what they were thinking about when they did the thing that caused the harm. And if you think about the Native American ceremonies and how these work, you hear the shyest, tiniest little minute suggestion, whisper of how things were among the Native Americans, but without context, without explanation. Always an Indian giver. Why are they called Indian givers? Because the natives just gave their stuff to whoever wanted. If you said, well, I love your whatever, they'd say, here you go. And so you could enjoy the thing, whatever it was, right? And I heard this about Georgia and some of the former former Russian former parts of the USSR, these countries that were taken over by the USSR. They said the same thing. You go to a poor area and you compliment something and it instantly becomes yours. You know, oh, that's a nice clock. Boom, they just hand it to you. That's a nice plate. They'll just give it to you, right? Well, the same thing happened in Native society, with the difference of you were expected to gift it either further to someone else to enjoy or back to the previous person. Someone gives it to you to enjoy. We know that novelty wears off and eventually it's just another thing. You know, you buy a new car and it's amazing for the first year or so, and then you get bored of it and you want a new one. You buy some new clothes, you're like, wow, this is awesome. And then it just becomes an outfit, right? Everything that you possess just gets boring over time. So they created actually in their society a structure where you could say, that's amazing. Wow, that rock is awesome. Well, sure, you want it. And then they give it to you expecting that if you're not a totally barbarous person. And in the book Civilized to Death, he says this. He says, someone who lives with our ideals would be considered either insane or highly dangerous in any typical tribe when you're not egalitarian. But so the natives would give people things and then they would say, oh, thank you. And then they would just keep it. And it would go on the nightstand or into storage or wherever, right? Or they would sell it. And then the natives would say, wait a second, what did you do with this thing? Well, you're an Indian giver. You gave me it and you expected it back. No, you don't understand how it works. We're generous with everybody, with everything all the time, but things have to keep moving. Because if you accumulate and you just say, that's nice, and you just gather it all and put, number one, you're not enjoying it, and neither is anyone else. And that reminds me of another quote that said, if we have someone who stacks newspapers to the ceiling, we call them a hoarder. But if someone has billions of dollars, we commend them and put them on the front page of our magazines of Fortune and Newsweek, right? All right, back to the topic. The topic is, so one other native practice that was not explained, or which I didn't understand until I really thought about it, was the peace pipe. And why do you have the passing of the peace pipe? First of all, why are you together in the first place? You get together because there's a conflict. Something's happening either between the tribes or within a tribe, and everyone's sitting around in a circle. And they know that if this dispute is not resolved to the satisfaction of everyone there, that war might break out. People may die. And this was the same thing. Watching Life on the Mesa, I saw exactly the same thing happening. They were all sitting there and they were talking, but it was clear that talking was level 1. Like, we're going to have this conversation. You need to both not do that and actually get the stuff back that you stole. And if you can't do that, if you can't live that way, you can't be among us. And if you insist on being among us, then we're going to escalate, because the way you're choosing to act is going to destroy all of us, destroy our society, right? And we can't allow that. So that's the same thing in the peace pipe. The idea that, I've got it around here somewhere. I have this thing and it says the talking stick. And the peace pipe is like the talking stick. And just like they have the puff puff pass in marijuana culture, you have this talking stick, this peace pipe that you're holding on to. And while you're holding the pipe, you're the one who speaks, right? And you're thinking, and you can take a puff, and you can think some more, and you can talk. And the point is, everyone is listening to you, and you get to say whatever you need to say, as long as it takes for you to say that, right? And then if it's too excessive, well, it's all burning down and no one else is getting in the pipe. So then the natural tendency is, okay, now I need to pass this on. But the idea is we're going around in a circle talking about what's going on and how we're all feeling, until everyone's feelings have been heard, until everyone's needs have been heard, until we can make a decision, so that we can make a good decision, which there's no one who's the authority there. No one gets to say, well, this is going to happen and you do this and you do this, which is so funny. I watch all these medieval movies, or these movies about Europe, and it's always like, we go to in best case scenario, we go to the baron, we go to the count, we go to the whoever, and we say, well, here's the problem, and that person says, all right, here's the decision, and you just kind of have to live with it. And this person has military power, and this person has police and sheriffs, and so the best case scenario, you're going to the emperor or the king, and then he's making a decision, and you just have to deal with the decision. Whatever he says is law, and okay, it's resolved. Well, how do people feel after that? And that's the difference between actual justice and artificial justice, or imposed justice, or violence-based justice, right? Authoritarian justice. Because one guy may feel incredibly slighted. He wasn't listened to at all, or he didn't get what he wanted. And therefore he's really mad, and he may go get revenge. He may go kill someone, and that may escalate into a war. So you can't completely ignore people's feelings. And our method of dealing with conflict in our society is, oh, well, here's the punishment. You're going 75 miles an hour. Were you endangering anyone? No. Okay, well, you're going to get a ticket. Here's a ticket. If you can't feed your family, we don't care. It doesn't matter. You just broke the law. That's the law. That's how it is. And that's how it's been going for a long time. Oh, you possessed a plant. All right, you're going to go to prison. Oh, it's your third time. You're going to be there for the rest of your life. That's just how it is, right? Without any mitigating circumstances, without talking to the person, without understanding what happened, right? Broke the law. Law's written down. Boom. We're the lawmakers, the lawgivers. This is how we do it. So the attitude and the paradigm is completely different in other cultures. In fact, I was watching a rerun of The Sopranos the other night. And in The Sopranos, they had a conflict between Junior and the Jewish guy who had the record company. And so they brought everybody together on a table, and they said, okay, well, what's going on? Who wants what? What's fair? What should happen? And then they came up with a decision that at the end, these very violent, hair trigger, evil mafia guys could all sign off on, to decide, okay, we're going to do this because, this is a better solution than whatever, even though it was one guy leaning on another guy for whatever reason. I don't understand the background. But again, they're worried about how people feel. And at the end of the decision, there, of course, there's the power behind it, but we want everyone to be happy. We want everyone to get along. If You see this in Goodfellas, another mafia movie, same thing. Guy is screaming at his wife is complaining about him, and it's very loud, and it's disturbing actually the mafia piece going on there. And so they say, look, you need to get things settled with your wife. You know, what's going on? It's not, you need to make her happy, whatever we need to do, you know, how, if we need to pull in the boss and talk to you both, whatever, this is what we need to do. Again, trying to mediate, trying to cause peace without some sort of violent, this is what you should do, boom, you have to, if you don't, bad consequences, right? So that was just the preliminary explanation of this, because I haven't even gotten to what I wanted to right now yet. But what I wanted to talk about is restorative justice. So restorative justice, let's consider our justice system first. Our justice system, you do something, say you spray paint someone's house. All right. Well, in most cases, you may get a fine, they may press charges, you may go to jail. Okay. Oh, or say you kill someone. Well, what happens? Again, you go to prison. Maybe you get the death penalty, whatever. In other words, it's very punishment based. It's very punishment focused. You're possessed marijuana. You go to prison. Same thing. All right, we know how it works. And if you tried to apply the exact same principle, you couldn't in your life. That's how parents generally handle children. Well, you do this thing. I punish you. I spank you. I take your privileges away. And what that does is that destroys every relationship in the entire context. And the worst part is it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't actually bring justice, because what is justice if someone spray paints your house? Well, justice if someone spray paints your house might be them repainting it, right? And paying for the repainting. Justice if someone kills your father and your father was the one earning money for the family might be that this person has to work to replenish all the money and the resources that you were getting from the person who was killed, right? Justice would restore what is taken, not just punish the person in charge. In fact, if someone kills in our society, then the victim gets to pay, at least in part, that this person is incarcerated through their taxes. In other words, we add insult to injury and more injury through the structures that we have right now, and they're breaking down and getting worse all the time. And so instead of providing restoration and healing and helping people understand what happened and how it felt for both parties, it's all punishment and locking people away and cages and or death penalty at the most intense, right? Well, restorative justice doesn't work that way. Restorative justice would get everyone on a table. You did this to these people. This is how they feel. This is what's going on, or he or she or whatever. Like they would talk about it in a safe space with the idea that, hey, if we don't solve this, you know, what are we gonna? Then we go to, then it escalates. Remember, I started talking about committees of vigilance. Well, these were groups. Let's say it's the Wild West, San Francisco and I will look it up so I don't get it too wrong. Vigilance. Yeah, San Francisco Committee of Vigilance is the first one comes out. A vigilante group formed in 1851. And it's interesting they call it a vigilante group. But think about this. Who are your favorite superheroes? Superman, Batman, etc. In fact, all the shows that you watch when people are cheering when the bad guy gets his at the end, it's 90% of the time vigilante justice. You know, very seldom is it, well, we're going to arrest him, we're going to put him through the court system. You know, he either the villain pulls the gun enough times so he gets shot and killed himself, or he gets the tar beat out of him by Batman. In other words, our entire justice sense when someone does something really horrible is we feel like they need to receive a punishment immediately, intensely, from someone who has no regard for courts or justice systems or legal rules or whatever else. And that's what we cheer at. The Bond villain who dies because Bond kills him. I have a license to kill. I don't have to obey any legal systems or constraints. That's what we learn about Bond. And same thing with Batman. Batman goes and beats him up, or, you know, I guess he's not supposed to kill people, but, you know, same thing, punishes people on the spot instantly. And then everyone cheers. Oh, yes, he got his comeuppance. That's how it was supposed to be. So there is something in us that says, okay, if people are doing things, there needs to be some justice met. There needs to be some restoration. And as we know, our entire justice system, so-called justice system, number one, isn't just for the reasons I just said. Number 2 takes a very long time. Number 3 has all sorts of loopholes. I mean, look at Elizabeth Smart's kidnapper and rapist, right? This guy kidnaps and rapes her, and then he gets a insanity plea, so he doesn't face the death penalty, and he's actually not really in prison. He's kind of treated as a mentally ill guy. But wait a second, what happened there? And how did he somehow escape the full punishment? I mean, I'm not saying he's released yet, but it just doesn't make sense to say, oh, well, you know, because his mind isn't quite right, we're going to treat him differently or lesser, or just, you know, not do the same thing that we would if he was conscious of how evil he was. We're talking about kidnapping and raping a 14-year-old girl, right? So you tell me what punishment is appropriate for that, regardless of your mental state, right? Or how do we keep structure in society if these things are happening, if people are doing this? Anyway, back to the San Francisco Committee of Vigilance. The catalyst for its formation was the criminality of the Sydney Ducks game. It was revived in 1856 in response to rampant crime and corruption in the municipal government of San Francisco. So I'm really shocked to hear that there was crime and corruption in the government somewhere. This is really new to me that that's even possible. So yeah, /sarcasm. The need for extra legal intervention was apparent with the explosive population growth following the discovery of gold. The small town of 900 individuals grew to a booming city of over 20,000 very rapidly. Okay, there we go. That's what I wanted. These militias hanged 8 people and forced several elected officials to resign. Each committee of vigilance formally relinquished power after 3 months. So basically, these people are saying, okay, the existing government is either corrupt or isn't solving the problems of violence and corruption that are happening in our society. Therefore, we're going to solve the problem as citizens, as people in this society. We're just going to get together and take care of the criminal issues. Imagine what would happen nowadays if people did that. Well, it would be the same thing that people cheer when they go to the theater and see it or watch on TV. The Avengers and the heroes, they're always beating up, killing the bad guys, and yet if you knew someone raped your daughter or murdered your wife or whatever, if you actually took it upon yourself to get justice, so to speak, then you would, of course, be punished to the full extent of the law. That's how it works now. And there's no option for you to get any sort of redress or understanding or hearing or healing happening between you and the aggressor. So restorative justice is going to actually work with how people truly are. First of all, there don't need to be written laws. Every being in the universe knows right from wrong, said K. Pax in a little bit dated, but I think a great film. And this is true. Do we know what's right and wrong, and how do we know it? Okay, so if we know right and wrong on some level, we don't need to be told, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, etc., right? But if we do these things, or even if we do something that we don't think is a problem, well, I just borrowed something from the garage. The interesting thing is, it's that person's perception that matters. It's the person who feels harmed whose perception is important for this, right? Among other things, because they have the option to act again or get revenge, right? So you can write down any law, and you can have any, like if you're speeding, if your wife is having a baby, is that okay, right? Same thing. So you can write down any law, but do you need laws for society? No, because people all have their own preferences, desires, needs, wills, and the people around them will say, okay, that makes sense, or it doesn't make sense. So if there is someone stepping over the line somewhere, and that line is decided by each person individually, it may be that you hunting bison in this area was completely okay before, and now they don't feel like it is. It doesn't have to be written down. It doesn't have to be codified. It just has to be someone's sensibility. You're not looking at who's right and who's wrong, who broke the law and who didn't. You're looking at how does each person feel after each person's action. And you would get together and you would share what happened for you. The aggressor can share what's happening for them. And after all that, you may have a completely different understanding of the issue. You know, is someone starving? Well, that's different. As you know, not La Boheme, but Victor Hugo, Les Miserables. Les Miserables, guy steals a loaf of bread and goes to prison, right, for a good purpose. And that's how law works. You do the thing, you have the punishment. Again, does it solve anything for anyone? Not really. So the context of why someone took a loaf of bread would come into sharing in this type of a structure. And then you would go through and try to find, okay, if someone was actually harmed, and if we feel that someone was harmed, then how do we fix it? How do we heal that? How do we resolve that? Right? And it's not we put that person in prison until they've suffered enough. No, we say, okay, whatever you've done, how do you make it right? Can you make it right within this structure in a way that people understand and appreciate what you've done, that you see that how they feel and you want to make it right? Or was no harm done, which may also be a verdict or a decision of the group, of the community, of the tribe. But in that case, they still have to convince the person who feels harmed or speak to them or provide empathy so that that person's feelings and needs can come out, regardless of whether other people feel like that was a real harm done to them or not. Does that make sense? And this is going to mess with your mind as a Western civilization person who's been told, well, we have codified laws. If the law's written down, then you should have to keep it all the time. Well, there's 75,000 pages of tax laws and hundreds of thousands of pages of other laws. And as the guy in one of my favorite videos on YouTube called Don't Talk to the Police says, he says, I mean, there's laws that are written that say if you break any law of America or any tribal code or any other national law, then you can be liable for a 10-year prison sentence and $10,000. And this one has to do with fish or animals or plants, right? And there's no way that anyone can know all of these laws involved, right? And yet we're told, well, there's another book called 3 Felonies a Day that says every American commits on average 3 felonies every day because that's how the system is set up, right? But is this actually to structure and help society, to help people, to help us get along better, to solve the problems and provide justice? Or is this to make a lot of money for the justice system, lawyers and judges, to fill private prisons that then get paid by the state to hold people in them and to hold the power over the middle class through the violence that gets pushed down upon those in lower classes? As we also know, if you have enough money, the law kind of doesn't apply to you. We've seen in the last few years kind of shakings and murmurings. The truth has gotten so strong and so out there that certain people have been brought to court, have been even convicted, and then sometimes released or sometimes disappear because they suicided, or we don't know exactly everything that's happening, but the upswell, the groundswell of anger and rage at people who are doing horrific things is really building in our society because we see that there's no justice. In fact, probably the most corrupt people have the most influence within the justice systems. That's just how it is. And if you focus that power, like I said, you have that ring of power, whoever has it is the one who gets to decide how things are, and there's not much you can do against it. Look at the Hong Kong protesters, Chinese genocide protesters. All of this, what are we going to do against any of this? Well, as long as there's a state with ultimate power deciding who gets justice and who doesn't, what it looks like, then all the justice system is a method for the powerful to protect themselves from the weak, for the rich to protect themselves from the strong. And as Napoleon says, and if they didn't have some sort of moral justification behind it, a la religion, the rich would kill and eat the poor, or the poor would kill and eat the rich, right? Because they would see how this is happening. The justification of capitalism, of our stratified social structure, is that every person can accomplish what they can and what they want to, and they can get as far in the world as they're worthy of getting. But even the people who are way up there, who are defending everything they have, that are so disconnected from everyone else, we don't understand how humanity works, how humans work, how our energy shares, and how when we open and connect and share and love, what is possible. We don't even feel it, and it's impossible to even get to that place in a world that's run by violence, which is why when Jesus showed up, it was such a magnificent transformation that he recommended, that each of us go on our own path in terms of forgiveness, in terms of love, forgiving 7 times 70, right? All of these things so that we can have the actual true body of connection to a group, a tribe, a clan to create what actually humans can do, the beauty of humanity and enjoyment of life, which happens through each other primarily. As much as we love our animals and as much as we love nature, we are a species that when we connect to one another, amazing energies are released and miracles are possible. We can't do that if we're in a society that's pitting this group against this group and then using the justice system to drive a deeper wedge in between people and to prevent justice from happening, rather than having the restoration and connection and empathy that's necessary to truly have justice. That would make sense in a truly civilized society, which we do not live in. All right, I will look if there are any. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Allison, for the comment. All right, thank you for listening. All my love, and we will see each other soon.